Thanks for joining this webinar. Welcome to this presentation of IFS version 7 made by DEKRA. That is intended to present you all the changes in the standard between the version 6.1 to the version 7 of IFS food standard. One quick word about myself. My name is Florent Perrochot. I am the business line manager for manufacturing and service activities at DEKRA Service Division Audits. I am a food technologist and I am a lead auditor for food and feed safety, and with the professional experience of 13 years as a food safety auditor for DEKRA. Let's jump into the content of this presentation. The content has been divided into 4 parts. The first part being IFS Revision Process. Second part is about the IFS Food Certification Protocol and the main changes compared to the previous version. Third part is about the requirements for certified companies. And the fourth part is a very quick suggestion of action plan to be implemented on the purpose of being certified against version 7. So let's start with the IFS revision process. As a first step with the timeline of this revision process, you'll see that it started a long time ago on the first quarter 2019 with the finalization of the draft. There has been many different steps, but finally the version 7 of IFS Food was published in October 2020. The first assessment against version 7 will start in March 2021, and the mandatory application of this new version of the standard will occur in July 2021. So after July 2021, no possibility to be audited against the previous version 6.1. Here are listed the objectives of the review and the change between the version 6.1 to the version 7. First purpose was to get an easier to read format. Second one is less bureaucracy. What they call less bureaucracy is that the standard is intended to be more oriented on operational tasks and processes more than documentation. The third objective is the improvement of the IFS food assessment checklist. Fourth one is an alignment with new GFSI benchmarking requirements and with the accreditation standard, and especially ISO 17065. And the last is the alignment with the Codex Alimentarius, with FSMA and with EU regulations. These are the 4 parts of the standards. So part 1 is dedicated to IFS Food Certification Protocol, and this is as well the first point that we will deal with today. Part 2 is checklist of IFS food assessment requirements. Part 3 is requirements for accreditation bodies, certification bodies and auditors, and part 4 is about the evaluation report, is more intended to auditors and certification bodies. The main changes are about the number of requirements, that is going from 281 to 237, so significant decrease of the number of requirements for certified companies. 36 requirements are merged. It represents 13% of the total number of requirements, 21 requirements are removed, 9% of the requirements, and 12 requirements are completely new. It represents 5% of the final number of requirements. You'll see here on the left part of the screen the 4 parts of the standard that we already mentioned in the previous slides, and on the right part of the screen, the list of the appendices to the standards. So all these appendices are listing all the requirements for some specific procedures of the standards. For example, Appendix 1 about application of IFS standards. It means which activity is concerned by IFS food, which is concerned by IFS logistics, by IFS broker, and so on. Appendix 2 is about certification process. So there is a big list of appendices. And the last one, glossary, is very important. And I would encourage you to read it carefully because it's often a part that is not read very much, but it's really important to understand all the concepts, all the terms of the requirements, and especially some new ones, such as the food safety culture. Just a quick reminder, whatever the translation is, whatever the language is of the standard, in case of any doubt about a requirement, the version that is the reference is the English one. It's very important as it may be some interpretation doubts or questionings sometimes in the translations. Let's jump into the changes of the certification protocol of IFS food. Here is a summary. You'll see that in the version 7, there is a minimum assessment time of 2 days, which is complying with the GFSI requirements, 2 days of which at least 50% of the time has to be spent on the production site. Second point is that an unannounced assessment has to be done over a 3-year certification cycle. It is as well a GFSI requirement. Clearly, it means that every IFS Food version 7 certified company has to be audited on unannounced way at least once every 3 years. And last but not least, there is a modification, a change into the scoring system, and we'll go through it in the next slides. So the scoring system of version 7 is the following. The type of grading are exactly the same as in the previous version. A, B, C, D, major or KO requirement. But A is still full compliance with the requirements. There is a significant change in the B grade. You can see here that is not anymore a deviation, but it's now a point of attention. And a point of attention, as stated here, it may lead to a future deviation, but it's not yet a deviation. C grade is a deviation because part of the requirement is not implemented, and D is a deviation leading to minus 20 points because the requirement is not implemented. No real change about the explanation of a major non-conformity or a KO stated with a D grade. For the KO, KO requirements can only be graded A if it's fully compliant, C, if part of the requirement is not implemented, or D, if the requirement is not implemented, and then the certificate cannot be issued. The main change here is that a KO requirement cannot anymore be graded B. No B scoring is possible for KO requirement anymore. As already stated, it's important to note that a B grade is a point of attention and is not a deviation. It means that the requirement is always compliant, but even though compliant, not deserving all the points, which would be an A grade. For C and D grades, these are deviations and then obligation to implement a corrective action, but from implementation of version 7, not only corrective action, but as well a correction, okay, with some deadlines defined by the standard. So the correction has to be implemented as soon as possible, okay, with some evidences supplied to the auditor or the certification body, and the corrective actions have to be implemented in acceptable timeline. I mean, okay. Let's go now to the requirements for certified companies and the detail of them. You'll see here that the titles of the standard did change a little bit. You have on the right side of the screen the structure of IFS Food version 7 requirements. So first part is about governance and commitment, so the name changed. Second part is about food safety and quality management system. Third part is about resource management. Fourth part is related to operating procedures. Fifth part is about measurements, analysis, and improvements. And the sixth one is about food defense plan. Let's go now into the detail of chapter 1, called governance and commitment. One of the most important changes into the version 7 of IFS Food is about the food safety culture. So you'll see here in the detail of requirements 1.1.1 that the senior management shall develop, implement, and maintain a corporate policy which shall include at a minimum several points, including food safety culture. Okay. And this corporate policy shall be communicated to all employees and shall be broken down into specific objectives for the relevant departments. So here is the introduction of this new concept of food safety culture. That is already present in some other standards, like, for example, BRC version 8. So those of you that are certified against these standards already know it. This concept of food safety culture is as well present in the requirement 1.4.1. The senior management shall ensure that the food safety and quality management system is reviewed at least annually, or more frequently if significant changes occur. Such reviews shall include at minimum several points, once again, including elements of food safety culture. Okay. I would encourage you once more to go back to the glossary of the IFS Food version 7, where the concept of food safety culture is defined. And there is as well one article on our DEKRA website related to food safety culture that may explain you a little bit deeper this concept. There is a new requirement about management review. in the requirement number 1.4.2, actions from the management review shall be clearly aimed at supporting improvement. The management review shall assess follow-up actions from previous management reviews, and any change that could affect the food safety and quality management system. The management review shall be fully documented. So it as well is a new requirement, even though all these points were already assessed by auditors, but then it's formalized here. Some inputs about Chapter 2 and the changes. Chapter 2 is related to food safety and quality management system. So the purpose, you can remind that it was in alignment with the Codex Alimentarius, and the main points are the HACCP system that has a plan, okay, with the CPs, so control points from previous version becoming control measures, especially in requirements 2.2.3.3. There are new types of hazards that are included: allergens, radiological hazards, contact packaging materials, sorry. So new types of hazards, and the responsibility for CCP's monitoring in requirements 2.2.3.8.2. There is a new requirement about the training of personnel in charge of CCPs, monitoring and control measures in 2.2.3.8.3. And finally, there is something new about the corrective actions and the root cause analysis in case of loss of control. So introduction of this root cause analysis requirement in section 2.2.3.9. Nothing really new in chapter 3, so we are just jumping to chapter 4, which is named Operational Processes. There are three new requirements about outsourced processes. So this is important to note. First, the 4.4.6, stating that where a company outsources a part of the product processing and or primary packaging and or labeling, so any part of the process, the company shall have it documented in the food safety and quality management system and ensure control over such processes to guarantee that food safety and product quality are not compromised. Control of such outsourced processes shall be identified and documented, and when required by the customer, there should be evidence that he has been informed, and it's very important that the customer has been informed about this outsourcing of part of the process, and that the customer has agreed to such outsourced process. So this was something that was already audited, but it's made more clear and easier to assess and to rate for auditors. So here for outsourced processes, you can see that the requirement implies a combination of documentation of it into the quality management system, of a formal agreement of the client, and a documented control of these processes. The two other requirements that are new concerning outsourced processes are the following: 4.4.7 and 4.4.8, stating that from one part, a written agreement shall be in place between the subcontractor and the certified company, covering the outsourced processes and describing any arrangement made in connection with it, including in-process controls, sampling, analysis, and so on. So control measures, including control measures. And the next one, 448, the company shall approve the supplier of the outsourced processes through certification against IFS food or other GFSI recognized food safety certification standard, or through documented supplier audit performed by an experienced and competent person, which shall include at a minimum requirements for food safety, product quality, legality, or authenticity. So outsourced process must be monitored and controlled through certification of the subcontractor or through audit of the subcontractor by experienced and competent person, and so on and so on. Let's go now to the product packaging, section 4.5. There is a reinforcement of packaging and container requirements, and it is explained mostly by the fact that in the glossary, once more, it is a reference to the glossary, the product definition changed a little bit in this version 7, because now the product definition is result of a process or activities for transforming inputs into outputs. A food product comprises packaging, and this is the part that is new. The packaging is formally part of the product in the view of IFS. Okay, product quality and safety then includes packaging requirements. So concerning product packaging, there are some more prescriptive requirements, and especially the first one for 5.1, based on hazard analysis assessment of associated risks and intended use. The company shall define the key parameters for the packaging materials and so on. The company shall check and verify the suitability of and existence of functional barriers of the consumer unit packaging material. Okay, so such as organoleptical tests, storage tests, chemical analysis, migration test results. So all these tests have to be done not on the packaging material itself only, but on the consumer unit to check the interactions between the packaging itself and the product. There is as well a more prescriptive requirement on 4.5.3. The company shall ensure that the used packaging and labeling correspond to the product being packaged and comply with agreed customer product certification. This shall be regularly checked and documented. So this is something specific to the correspondence between the product and its labeling, because you may know that the mislabeling or failure in labeling and non-correspondence between labeling and product is the first cause of withdrawals and recalls in the food retail. So it's very important and has economic impacts for the retailers. That's why it's so important. Additionally to those directly related to section 4.5, there are some requirements that now mention packaging as well. For example, 4.2.1.3 for the packaging material specifications. The requirement was already in version 6.1, but now it's in the section related to specifications. In sections 4.3.2 and 4.3.3 packaging requirements, as an integral part of the research and development process. In section 5.6, control plan must include packaging materials and not only the product itself. And in section 5.7.1, product release procedure must include packaging materials. So it has as well an indirect link to traceability of packaging materials for sure. Let's go now to section 4.8 called plant layout and process flow. One new requirement is the 4.8.3. In the case of areas sensitive to a microbiological, chemical, and physical risks, which is justified by risk assessment, they shall be designed and operated to ensure product safety is not compromised. This is not only related to white rooms and to level of risk associated to microbiological consideration, but now as well chemicals and physical risks. Here, this is quite a frequent observation that the auditors are making during the audits. This one is specifically related to the plastic strip curtains separating the internal areas that shall be in good condition and easy to clean. This is a new requirement as well. Let's go now to section 4.10 called cleaning and disinfection. There is not really a new requirement, but this one is more explicit and simplified. The 4.10.3 stating that monitoring records for cleaning and disinfection shall be available. Honestly, it was already assessed by the auditors, but now it's written clearly and very easy for auditors to raise this point if needed. Let's go now to section 4.12 called foreign material risk mitigation. There are some new bullet points in this requirement 4.12.1 stating that the products being processed shall be protected against physical contamination, which includes, but is not limited to, environmental contaminants, oils or dripping liquids from machinery, dust spills, and so on. Okay, so it's not only related to foreign bodies, to physical contamination, but can be associated to chemical one, so foreign material and not only foreign bodies. This is a new thing. Now about pest monitoring and control, section 4.13, there is a reinforcement of the requirements and change from 6 to 7 requirements with one new one stating that the site infrastructure and operations shall be designed and built to prevent pest infestation. So for some activities, more upstream the supply chain, quite close to agricultural activities and so on, first packaging and so on, may be of importance. Still in the pest monitoring and control section, this 4.13.2 states that the company shall have adequate pest control measures in place which shall be in compliance with local requirements and shall take into account at a minimum several points, including new ones, type of raw material and finished products, constructional designs susceptible for pest activity, and rented storage if applicable. So if the company is renting a a store, the responsibility for sure for pest monitoring and control applies to the audited company, not only to the subcontractor, I mean. Now requirements for 13.3, where a company hires a third-party service provider for pest control. All requirements specified above shall be clearly defined in the service contract, and a person at the company shall be appointed and trained to monitor the pest control measures. So it means even though it is subcontracted, one person has to take over the responsibility within the company. Okay, and has to be trained, not necessarily externally, but evidences of competence shall be provided or available at least. Let's go to the transport section 4.15. This is a bit more detailed, and especially the requirement for 15.6, stating that the loading, unloading areas shall be appropriate for their intended use. They shall be constructed in a way that the risks of pest intake are mitigated, that the products are protected from adverse weather conditions, accumulation of waste is avoided, condensation and growth of mold are prevented, and cleaning can be easily undertaken. Yeah, it's something that was already assessed, but once more, it's clearer for everybody as it is formally stated in one requirement. Let's go to section traceability 4.18. There is a change from 7 to 8 requirements, and there is a small change in the KO number 7 requirement, sorry, for 18.1. A traceability system shall be in place, nothing new. The traceability system shall incorporate all relevant records of receipt, processing, distribution, and the use of rework. So in case a process includes the use of rework products, then it is formally included into the traceability requirement. So once more, it is something that was already audited if rework was present into the process, but now it's clearly written and clearer for everybody. And the new requirement in this section traceability is the 4.18.3. Test results, including the time frame for obtaining the information, shall be recorded, and where necessary, appropriate actions shall be taken. Time frame objectives shall be defined and be in compliance with customer requirements. This means that if there is a requirement into the client specification for traceability information to be available within 2 hours, 3 hours, or 4 hours, it has to be taken into account in the traceability tests that are done as frequently as necessary by your company. It's important to note that there is a removal of the requirement of 4.19. This is a section that was dedicated to GMOs. Okay. However, it's now including in the requirements of the purchasing section. Okay, 4.2, and especially requirement 4.2.1.5, stating that where customers specifically require that products are free from certain substances or ingredients, such as gluten, pork, etc., or that certain methods of treatment of production are excluded, such as GMOs, verifiable procedures shall be in place. So it's clearly stated here. Honestly, all this chapter about GMO was really often not applicable, at least in Europe. So it is a simplification of the standard. Now let's go to allergen risk mitigation, section 419. There is as well a change from the number of requirements from 7 to 8. So there is an additional one, and there is a requirement that is updated. This is a 419.2, based on hazard analysis and assessment of associated risks. Preventive and control measures shall be in place. So preventive measures are added to ensure that potential cross-contamination of products by allergen is minimized. The potential cross-contamination risks related to environment, transport, storage, raw materials shall be considered. So it's more detailed. And it includes formally environment, transport, storage, and raw materials, not only manufacturing steps. The following requirement for 19.3 is updated as well. Finished products containing allergens that require declaration shall be declared in accordance with legal requirements. Accidental or technically unavoidable cross-contaminations of legally declared allergens and traces shall be labeled. The decision shall be based on a hazard analysis and assessment of associated risk. And what's new, the potential cross-contamination with allergens from raw material processed in the company shall also be taken into account on the product label. So this is clearly stated here. It's a usual practice of the certified company, but sometimes there have been some lacks identified here, and that's why it's more detailed. One point about food fraud and section 4.20. There is a new requirement stating that the responsibilities for a food fraud vulnerability assessment and mitigation plan shall be clearly defined. The responsible person shall have the appropriate specific knowledge and full commitment from the senior management. So responsibility has to be defined, and the person in charge has to be trained, has to be able to demonstrate competence and have the senior, the commitment and the support, full support of senior management. Let's go now to chapter 5. There are not many changes in chapter 5, but some are quite important, and especially this one related to corrective action. A root cause analysis is now mandatory in case of loss of control of CCP, but, and we already mentioned it, you can remember when we talked about chapter 2, but it is optional in case of a non-conform product, okay? So the requirement 5.11.1 has been changed a little bit. A procedure shall be in place for the recording and analysis of non-conformities and non-conforming products, with the objective to avoid recurrences by preventive and or corrective actions. This may include a root cause analysis. This may include and not must include. So that's why it is optional here. Recommended, but optional. Now we are coming to chapter 6, called Food Defense Plan. There is a reduction of the number of requirements from 8 to 4. Some points are not anymore required, and we will list them now. It is alert system defined and regularly tested. It's about proofs, evidence, records of on-site inspections if required by legislation. It's about control of access zones or areas. It's about procedures to avoid malicious acts, about identification of the personnel responsible for loading and unloading, and training of all employees. All these points, these 6 points, are not anymore formally required. Concerning the management commitment, there is a slight change here in section or requirement 6.1. The responsibilities for the food defense plan shall be clearly defined. Those responsible shall have the appropriate specific knowledge and training and have full commitment from the senior management. Okay, so full commitment of the senior management shall be demonstrated. And requirement 6.3 about efficiency, efficiency tests. The test on the effectiveness of the food defense plan and the related control measures shall be included in the internal audit and the inspection plan. So it has to be part of the internal audit plan, annual plan. Okay, so this means that it has to be done at least annually. So now we went through all the requirements for certified company. We'll just speak a little bit about our suggestion of priority topics for implementation of an action plan in order to be ready for version 7. We'll see here that this is a summary of actions needed for version 7. First one is to document an action plan for food safety culture. Documenting an action plan for food safety cultures implies that you already have kind of a diagnostic of the situation regarding food safety culture. How deeply are the employees involved? How deeply is the management involved in food safety and so on? And what are the values of the company about it and so on? Once more, I can recommend you to browse a little bit on our DEKRA website, where there is an article about food safety culture that may help you progress on the topic. Second point is to update the procedure for managing non-conforming products to include the root cause analysis in the event of loss of control of a CCP, at least. Remember, it is mandatory for loss of control of a CCP. It is optional for non-conforming products. But anyway, at least for the CCP's loss of control, you have to change the procedure to implement a root cause analysis. The third point is to evaluate the quality of packaging and improve the monitoring of the packaging, because you can remember that now packaging is a part of the definition of the product itself. So every requirement applying to product is now applying to packaging and packaging materials, especially. The following point is to strengthen the labeling process, because it's now a clear requirement, okay, and to monitor and to control the conformance between the product and its labeling. Following point is to train a member of your company to monitor pest control measures. I just want to repeat that this is not necessarily an external training, but a training has to be done and competence has to be demonstrated. Okay. And last but not least, you have to clearly define the food fraud team and the responsibilities for food fraud as risk mitigation. So these are the points that we identify as crucial for implementation of all the requirements of version 7. I hope this presentation has been useful for you and that you will be able to implement all the points. In case you want to know more, you have some questions about our services or the implementation of some of the points we discussed today, you have here my contact details, phone, mobile phone, and email. So you can note it and use it if necessary. Now, I want to thank you for your interest into this topic, and I can encourage you to go deeper into the standard and to contact one of our experts if you have some additional question or interest into the topic. Thank you very much.